Air travel safety. Amid the recent plane collisions and crash landings, there is certainly a sense of nervousness in the air, and many are questioning if hiring standards could be to blame. An attorney at the forefront of a historic lawsuit shares some discoveries from court. Next. Grady Block is an attorney with Mountain States Legal Foundation. Good to see you, Grady. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liz. Excited to be here.
With several horrific plane crashes, from D.C. to Philadelphia, Arizona, just more recently here, a crash landing that involved a flight from Minneapolis. But air travel safety has made for some tragic headlines in the news. But you've been involved in a lawsuit that goes back a decade now. With that in mind, it seems like your law firm has sent a warning that should have been heeded a long time ago here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we represent a group of about 1,000 plaintiffs in this class action against the FAA. They are people who went to college, went through collegiate training initiatives, did everything they were supposed to do. Most of them passed, all of them passed with flying colors. A lot of them passed with, full 100% across the board. And the Obama-Biden administration looked at the hiring class and said, this looks a little bit too white for what we want. We want to expand DEI initiatives. So they got rid of the CTI program, which was the Collegiate Training Initiative, and they switched the entire thing to a new questionnaire that was based on biographical information, and it was designed to effectively gerrymander out the white people from the hiring class. So we asserted Title VII claims against them, and like you mentioned, it was quite a long time ago. This was 10 years ago in 2015 when we filed the suit. And so we've been litigating ever since then, and I totally agree. This is something that should have been fixed. Well, it should have never been a problem, but it should have been fixed from the outset, and the problem's only gotten worse when you're excluding people from the hiring class.
Yeah, you can see what's playing out today, but in taking a look back, although we still don't know exactly what role this all played in that collision at Reagan National Airport, it nonetheless indicates that the air traffic control tower wasn't fully staffed. We know that. They came out quickly to say that. In response to the tragedy, Vice President J.D. Vance brought your very lawsuit up. Let's listen.
If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Given the long history of your case, how have your clients then reacted to these latest headlines, given everything they've been through, and the reports that thousands of positions for air traffic controllers need to be filled?
Sure. I think it's a mix of emotions. With 1,000 people, you're always going to have a lot of different range of emotions. There are some people that are happy that there are eyeballs on the situation now, that people are actually aware of this issue. Because, just talking to different people, a lot of people have no idea that there's a massive understaffing at the FAA for air traffic controllers. And it leads to incredibly dangerous situations. And, just talking to people, when you explain what's going on, they're usually shocked and horrified and borderline afraid to, fly anymore. But there's that aspect of it. Some people are still just very frustrated. These people went to college, spent tons of money to try to become air traffic controllers, and then to have the entire carpet just yanked out from under them. It's a really sad situation. So on one hand, they're happy that there's some, coverage and people are finally noticing and waking up to the issue. But on the other hand, people are very frustrated because, these are jobs that they wanted to have and were shut down because of the race.
And I know you can't divulge all the details, but overall, where does the civil suit stand at this point?
Yeah, so, after 10 years of litigating, you would think it's a lot further along than it is. But class actions tend to take a lot longer, and especially when it's against the federal government. So we are solidly within the discovery phase, which is just after pleadings and initial motions to dismiss usually happen. So we haven't gotten to anything merits-based yet, and part of the reason for that, to be honest with you, is the Biden administration had the Department of Justice attorneys assert privilege over about 14,000 documents. So some of those they're saying we have, some of them we don't have, but they're asserting privilege over 14,000 documents that are relevant and responsive to our discovery requests. So we've been in a prolonged fight about whether privilege applies, what should happen with those documents, and just trying to get through that part so we can get to the actual merits of the case.
On your website at mslegal.org, there's a summary of the case that says, quote, DEI hiring policies have no place in America, especially in safety critical industries. Yet they have shaped the FAA's hiring decisions for years. Instead of selecting the most qualified individuals, those with the strongest skills, training, and experience, the FAA has focused on ideological quotas. This approach sacrifices merit and competence in favor of arbitrary racial and gender preferences, creating unnecessary risk in one of the most high-stakes professions in the world. But given the history and the unfortunate headlines, it seems though the stakes could not be higher here, Grady.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I was saying earlier, it's amazing when you tell people about how many near misses there are at airports across the country. They're shocked generally. And I was one of those people, to be honest with you. I wasn't on this case until fairly recently. And I had a trip to Washington, D.C., I think last summer. And the attorney that was handling the case before me was like, hey, by the way, they've had 6 near misses at DCA in the last couple weeks. So I hope you're flying to Dulles. And I was like, oh, great. Thanks for that. But yeah, no, people are shocked, and it's understandable. It's a very, very dangerous situation, especially when you're understaffed. Any job that's understaffed is going to suffer, but especially if you're greatly understaffed. There are about 14,000 air traffic controllers in the country, and they excluded a class of 1,000. So that problem is just going to exacerbate. And what's unfortunate is you can't just wave a wand to just fill those positions, And with that, it's going to come very dangerous situations like the one we saw at Reagan. There have been several crashes, as you mentioned, and it's really unfortunate, but it is definitely the situation we find ourselves in.
Right. The bottom line is lives are on the line. I mean, each and every day. What happens then next for your clients and their case? And also, are stories like this helping to move this along? Do you think you'll see some momentum there, Grady?
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things, I think a lot of eyeballs being on the story definitely helps us. Like you mentioned, J.D. Vance had something to say about it. President Trump's alluded to it. We're in a lot friendlier administration now than we were 2 months ago. I'm very hopeful that what will happen next is that President Trump will hopefully order the DOJ to, one, stop asserting bogus privileges over the 14,000 documents so we can continue. But even better, ideally he orders us to settle the case. We can move on and get back to hiring based on merit instead of just somebody's race.
Yeah, and I think that is certainly a shared hope by so many. But Grady Block, an attorney with Mountain States Legal Foundation. For more information, head over to mslegal.org. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the work you do.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it.
That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We will see you next time.